The crystalline spires of the Galactic Technology Summit gleamed with quantum luminescence, their surfaces rippling with data streams that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Representatives from the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had gathered to showcase their latest innovations, competing to demonstrate the pinnacle of technological sophistication. In the center of the vast exhibition hall, high technicians Ixara of the Nexus Collective stood before a holographic display that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Her crystalline form pulsed with harmonic frequencies as she addressed the assembled dignitaries, her voice carrying undertones that resonated through quantum foam itself. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her words translated through 17 different dimensional layers. "To accommodate the various species present, we gather today to celebrate the triumph of true technological advancement. The Nexus Collective is proud to present the culmination of 3 million years of quantum research, the Star Killer." The demonstration that followed defied conventional understanding of physics. Quantum crystalline matrices folded spacetime like origami, creating pocket dimensions where entire star systems could be isolated and manipulated. Energy patterns that existed beyond the visible spectrum danced through calculations that required computers the size of moons to process. "Observe," Ixara continued, her form brightening with pride, "as our quantum crystalline architecture manipulates the fundamental constants of reality itself. This device can alter the nuclear binding forces within stellar cores, causing controlled stellar collapse or expansion. It represents the absolute pinnacle of technological sophistication." Murmurs of awe rippled through the assembled aliens. The ethereal collective's representatives flickered with admiration. The Techno-Confederacy's observers calculated probability matrices with visible excitement. This was technology that transcended mere engineering. It was applied theoretical physics operating at the level of universal constants. At the back of the hall, Chief Engineer Sarah Wrench Rodriguez watched the proceedings with the kind of expression usually reserved for watching someone juggle flaming chainsaws while riding a unicycle. At 45, she had spent her entire career building things that worked, fixing things that broke, and maintaining a profound skepticism toward anything that couldn't be repaired with a toolkit and some common sense. And now, Ixara announced, with obvious condescension, "We shall observe a demonstration from our newest members. The humans of Sol System will display their current technological capabilities." The emphasis on current made it clear that everyone present considered human technology to be several evolutionary steps behind galactic standards. Rodriguez stepped forward to the designated demonstration area, her worn coveralls and practical tool belt creating a stark contrast to the flowing robes and exotic energy fields of the alien dignitaries. "Right," she said, her voice carrying the practical authority of someone who had spent decades making things work. "I'm going to show you something we call a torque wrench." The demonstration that followed was profoundly anticlimactic by galactic standards. Rodriguez displayed a collection of human tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, hammers, mechanical gauges, analog computers, and hydraulic systems. Each device was explained in terms of basic mechanical principles, leverage, friction, pressure, and kinetic energy transfer. "This is a pressure relief valve," she explained, holding up a device that looked impossibly primitive compared to the quantum wonders surrounding it. "When pressure exceeds safe parameters, this spring-loaded mechanism opens automatically, preventing catastrophic system failure. It requires no power source, no computer control, and no exotic materials. It just works." The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. Senator Velmuth of the Techno-Confederacy leaned forward, his optical sensors focusing on the Crude device with something approaching disbelief. "This mechanism operates without quantum processing?" he asked, his voice carrying undertones of confused disgust. "That's right," Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "No quantum processing, no neural networks, no exotic energy sources, just basic physics applied through mechanical engineering." "But how does it calculate optimal pressure thresholds?" demanded Ambassador Clickstar of the computational hegemony. "How does it analyze system parameters and determine appropriate response algorithms?" "It doesn't calculate anything," Rodriguez explained patiently. "The spring is calibrated to compress at a specific pressure. When that pressure is exceeded, the valve opens. When pressure drops, it closes. No calculations required." The concept seemed to physically pain the assembled aliens. High technician Ixara's crystalline form flickered with what could only be described as revulsion. This is precisely why human technology remains in the pre-quantum development phase, she declared, her harmonic voice carrying clear disdain. You approach problems with crude mechanical solutions instead of elegant quantum manipulations. Your methods are primitive, unsophisticated, barely evolved beyond stone tools. They're also reliable, Rodriguez replied, her tone remaining carefully neutral despite the obvious insult. These systems have failure rates measured in decades or centuries. They work in environments that would destroy quantum computers. They can be repaired by anyone with basic training and simple tools. Reliability through crudeness, Zixara dismissed, a stopgap measure employed by species lacking the sophistication to develop proper solutions. Advanced civilizations use quantum error correction, self-healing crystalline matrices, and probability-based failure prevention, and when those systems fail, they do not fail. Quantum systems are designed with mathematical perfection. They operate according to fundamental, universal constants. Failure is theoretically impossible. Rodriguez bit back her immediate response. 3 decades of engineering experience had taught her that anything designed to be foolproof would eventually encounter a more sophisticated fool, but she understood her place in this technological hierarchy. Humans were the new kids, the primitives, the species still playing with sticks and stones, while their betters manipulated the fabric of reality itself. I understand your position, she said diplomatically. Quantum technology is certainly more sophisticated than mechanical systems. Indeed, Zixara replied, her form brightening with satisfaction, which brings us to today's most significant presentation. Esteemed colleagues, the Nexus Collective is prepared to demonstrate the ultimate expression of quantum technological advancement. A device capable of manipulating stellar fusion processes across galactic distances, the Starkiller materialized in the center of the exhibition hall, its presence causing reality to bend visibly round its quantum field generators. The device defied easy description, part crystalline matrix, part folded spacetime, part living mathematics given physical form. It existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, its true structure extending far beyond what 3-dimensional beings could perceive. This device, Zixara announced with obvious pride, represents the pinnacle of technological achievement. It can alter the fundamental forces within stellar cores, causing controlled collapse or expansion. It operates by manipulating quantum probability fields to adjust nuclear binding constants within targeted star systems. The assembled dignitaries watched in awe as the demonstration began. The Starkiller's quantum matrices aligned, creating probability cascades that rippled through hyperspace. Toward a distant uninhabited system, mathematical equations that required planet-sized computers to solve were calculated instantaneously by quantum processors that existed partially outside normal space-time. Rodriguez watched the proceedings with growing unease. The device was undoubtedly impressive, a technological marvel that operated on principles barely understood by human science. But something about its design triggered every engineering instinct she had developed over 3 decades of fixing complicated systems. Excuse me, she said, raising her hand like a student in class. But what happens if the quantum cascade develops a feedback loop? The question caused a ripple of what might have been laughter among the alien observers. Zixara's crystalline form flickered with amusement. Feedback loops are prevented by quantum error correction algorithms, she explained with exaggerated patience. The system continuously monitors its own probability states and adjusts parameters to prevent recursive calculations. But what if the error correction system itself develops an error? The error correction system has its own error correction system, and if that one fails, it has an error correction system as well. Rodriguez felt a familiar chill run down her spine. How many layers of error correction are there? 17,423 discrete quantum monitoring systems, each capable of detecting and correcting probability fluctuations in the others. And who monitors the monitors? The question hung in the air for a moment before Zixara responded with obvious irritation. The system is mathematically perfect. It cannot fail. Famous last words, Rodriguez thought, but she kept her concerns to herself. The demonstration continued, the Starkiller's quantum fields reaching across space to toy with stellar fusion processes. Light years away, it was an impressive display of technological prowess, a feat that human science couldn't hope to match. It was also, Rodriguez realized with growing horror, a Rube Goldberg machine of cosmic proportions. an enormously complicated system designed to perform a relatively simple task with thousands of potential failure points and no apparent backup systems. The demonstration is complete, Zixara announced as the Starkiller's quantum field stabilized. The target star has been successfully aged by approximately 10 million years, demonstrating precise control over stellar evolution processes. The assembled dignitaries erupted in applause and congratulations. The Starkiller was hailed as the ultimate expression of galactic civilization, proof that sufficiently advanced technology was indistinguishable from magic. Rodriguez remained silent, her engineering instincts screaming warnings that no one wanted to hear. She had seen this before, elaborate systems designed by brilliant theorists who had never spent a night in a broken-down factory, trying to repair critical equipment with whatever tools were available. Beautiful, sophisticated, elegant systems that worked perfectly right up until they didn't. Magnificent, breathed Ambassador Clickstar. To think that quantum manipulation could achieve such precise control over cosmic forces. It is the natural result of abandoning primitive mechanical approaches, Zixara replied, her gaze settling meaningfully on Rodriguez. When one transcends crude physical solutions in favor of elegant quantum manipulations, true technological mastery becomes possible. At maintenance, Rodriguez asked, her engineering mind unable to let the question go. How do you service a quantum system that exists in 17 dimensions? Service is unnecessary, Zixara replied dismissively. The quantum crystalline matrices are self-maintaining. They exist in probability states that prevent degradation. But if something goes wrong, nothing can go wrong. The system is mathematically perfect. Rodriguez nodded slowly, filing away her concerns. She had learned, through bitter experience, that the phrase mathematically perfect was usually followed by catastrophic failure, involving components that the designers had forgotten to account for. I'm sure you're right, she said diplomatically. Quantum technology is certainly beyond anything we humans could hope to understand. Precisely, Zixara agreed, apparently missing the subtle irony in Rodriguez's tone, which is why human participation in advanced technological development remains limited. Perhaps in several thousand years, when your species has evolved beyond mechanical crudeness, you might be ready to contribute to real scientific progress. The dismissal was clear and final. Humans were primitives, playing with toys while their betters manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. Rodriguez gathered her demonstration materials, her crude wrenches and primitive pressure valves, and prepared to return to the human section of the summit. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed the most dangerous device ever created by intelligent life. Not because of its power, though that was certainly frightening, but because of its complexity. Because in her experience, the more complicated a system was, the more ways it could fail. And when a system that could manipulate stellar fusion processes failed, the consequences would be somewhat more serious than a blown fuse or a seized bearing. The failure began 72 hours later, during what should have been a routine recalibration of the Starkiller's quantum matrices. The device was being prepared for its next demonstration, the complete restructuring of a binary star system to create a more stable orbital configuration. The first sign of trouble was subtle, barely registering on the Nexus Collective's monitoring systems. A minor fluctuation in the quantum field generators, well within normal parameters. The 17th level error correction algorithms noted the anomaly, calculated the optimal response and implemented corrective measures, which caused a feedback loop in the 16th level error correction system, which triggered cascading failures in the 15th through 3rd level systems, which caused the 2nd level error correction algorithms to implement emergency stabilization protocols, which created a recursive calculation loop in the primary quantum matrix. High Technician Zixara stood in the Starkiller's control chamber, watching with growing alarm as status displays shifted from blue to yellow to red. With increasing frequency, around her, teams of quantum technicians worked frantically at crystalline control interfaces, their harmonic voices creating discordant patterns as they struggled to understand what was happening. Report, she commanded, her usually melodious tone sharp with concern. Primary quantum matrix is experiencing probability cascade failures, reported Technician Melvox, his crystalline form flickering with stress harmonics. Error correction systems are implementing corrective measures, but each correction seems to generate additional errors. Impossible, Zixara replied automatically. The system is mathematically perfect. Run a complete diagnostic. We've run 17 complete diagnostics. The system checks as mathematically perfect, but it's still failing. Zixara moved to the primary control interface, her consciousness interfacing directly with the Starkiller's quantum network. What she found there defied her understanding of theoretical physics. The device was indeed operating according to its mathematical parameters. Every calculation was correct, every quantum state was stable, every probability matrix was perfectly aligned, and it was completely out of control. The quantum cascade is expanding, reported another technician, his voice carrying the harmonic equivalent of panic. Reality distortions are beginning to manifest in local space-time. Through the control chamber's viewing ports, the evidence was visible to the naked eye, or its alien equivalent. Space itself was beginning to ripple, like water disturbed by an invisible stone. Stars flickered and shifted position as gravitational constants fluctuated. The fabric of reality was becoming unstable. Initiate emergency shutdown protocols. Zixara ordered. Shutdown protocols are not responding, came the reply. The system is locked in a calculation loop. It's trying to solve a quantum equation that has no solution, but the error correction algorithms won't allow it to stop calculating. Then override the error correction systems. The error correction systems are protected by error correction systems. We can't shut them down without triggering additional protective measures. Zixara felt something that her species had evolved beyond millennia ago, pure, primitive terror. The ultimate expression of galactic technological achievement was eating itself alive, and their most sophisticated diagnostic systems could only confirm that everything was working exactly as designed. Contact the Galactic Council, she ordered. We need assistance from every advanced civilization in the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the same exhibition hall where the Starkiller had been triumphantly demonstrated just days earlier. But now the atmosphere was one of barely controlled panic. The quantum weapon's reality distortions were expanding exponentially, threatening not just the Nexus Collective's home system, but the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The situation is unprecedented, reported Council Administrator Thexalon, his normally calm demeanor cracked by the magnitude of the crisis. Our most advanced quantum physicists are unable to determine how to shut down the device. Every attempted solution seems to make the problem worse. Around the chamber, representatives from the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations worked frantically at holographic displays, their quantum computers running calculations that require the computational power of entire star systems. The Ethereal Collective had deployed their most advanced probability manipulation technology. The Techno-Confederacy had activated emergency protocols that diverted the processing power of their entire civilization to the problem. Nothing was working. The quantum cascade is now affecting 17 star systems, continued Thexalon. Reality distortions are causing stellar fusion processes to become unstable. We estimate complete galactic saturation within 48 standard time periods. There must be a solution, insisted Ambassador Velmuth of the Techno-Confederacy. Our quantum computers have analyzed over 9 billion possible approaches. The mathematical solution exists, we simply haven't found it yet. Perhaps, suggested a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. The mathematical solution isn't the right solution. All attention turned to the source of the comment, Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had been sitting in the Human Observer section. Throughout the crisis briefing, her presence had been tolerated only because the Council was desperate enough to accept input from any source, no matter how primitive. Explain, demanded Zixara, her crystalline form flickering with desperate hope and skeptical irritation in equal measure. Rodriguez stood, her tool belt jangling softly as she approached the central holographic display. You've got a system that's stuck in a calculation loop. It's trying to solve an equation that has no solution, but it can't stop trying because its error correction systems won't let it accept failure. That is an accurate assessment, Zixara admitted grudgingly. So, why not just turn it off? The silence that followed was profound. The assembled representatives of galactic civilization stared at the human engineer, as if she had suggested solving the crisis by hitting the Starkiller with a rock. Turn it off? Repeated Administrator Thexalon slowly. The device cannot be turned off. It operates through quantum probability manipulation across 17 dimensions. There is no switch. There's always a switch, Rodriguez replied with the confidence of someone who had spent decades working with complicated machinery. Maybe not an obvious one, but there's always a way to interrupt the power supply, break the control circuits, or physically disconnect critical components. You're suggesting physical intervention in a quantum system, Zixara said, her voice carrying harmonics of horrified disbelief. That is impossible. Quantum states cannot be altered through crude mechanical manipulation, can't they? Rodriguez asked. Show me the device. The request was so unprecedented that it took several minutes for the council to process it. No primitive species had ever been granted access to advanced quantum technology. The very idea violated fundamental principles of technological development. But with galactic civilization facing extinction, unprecedented became necessary. The Star Killer Control Facility was a marvel of quantum architecture that existed partially outside normal three-dimensional space. Rodriguez found herself walking through corridors that bent in directions that didn't have names, past control systems that operated through direct manipulation of mathematical concepts. It was also, she realized within minutes of arrival, a maintenance nightmare. Where are the access panels? She asked, studying the seamless crystalline walls of the primary control chamber. Access panels? Zixara's confusion was evident in her harmonic fluctuations. The system maintains itself. Physical access is unnecessary. Everything needs maintenance eventually. Rodriguez replied, running her hands along the crystal surfaces, looking for seams or connection points. How do you replace worn components? Components do not wear. They exist in quantum probability states that prevent degradation, okay? But what if they break anyway? They cannot break. The mathematics prevent. The mathematics aren't preventing this thing from eating reality. Rodriguez interrupted, her engineer's pragmatism overriding diplomatic courtesy. So maybe the mathematics are wrong. The suggestion was tantamount to blasphemy in the Nexus Collective's technological philosophy. But as if to underscore Rodriguez's point, another wave of reality distortion rippled through the facility, causing the crystalline walls to briefly become transparent and revealing the chaotic quantum energies roiling beyond. The cascade is accelerating, reported technician Melvox from his monitoring station. We estimate 6 standard time periods until the distortion field reaches critical saturation. Rodriguez continued her examination of the Star Killer systems, her trained eye looking for the kind of fundamental design flaws that sophisticated engineers often overlooked. What she found was worse than she had expected. The entire device was a single, integrated system with no redundancy, no isolation circuits, and no manual overrides. This thing is a classic over-engineered death trap, she muttered, more to herself than to the assembled alien technicians. One point of failure brings down the entire system. The integrated design ensures optimal quantum coherence, Zixara defended. Separate subsystems would introduce probability uncertainties that could destabilize the quantum matrix, and now that is destabilized anyway. You can't isolate the problem, Rodriguez replied. The failure is propagating through the entire system because everything is connected to everything else. She stopped at what appeared to be the central control nexus, a crystalline structure that pulsed with mathematical concepts made visible. Energy patterns flowed through it in ways that defied conventional understanding of physics, creating a hypnotic display of living geometry. This is the primary calculation matrix, she asked. Yes, Zixara confirmed. It processes the quantum equations necessary for stellar manipulation. Currently, it is trapped in a recursive calculation loop, attempting to solve an unsolvable equation. Rodriguez studied the device with the expression of someone who had seen this problem before, in simpler but analogous systems. The calculation loop is being maintained by the error correction algorithms, right? Correct. The error correction systems will not allow the matrix to accept that the equation has no solution. So we need to break the loop, force the system to accept failure and move on. Impossible. The error correction systems are hardwired into the quantum architecture. They cannot be disabled without destroying the entire matrix. Rodriguez pulled a hammer from her tool belt. The reaction from the assembled alien technicians was immediate and universal. Zixara's crystalline form blazed with horrified outrage, while her subordinates emitted harmonic frequencies that probably translated as screaming. You cannot, Zixara said, her voice carrying undertones that made the air itself vibrate with distress, strike a quantum matrix with a primitive kinetic tool. The quantum states will collapse catastrophically. The entire system will be destroyed. Good, Rodriguez replied calmly. That's the point. but the star killer represents 3 million years of technological development. It is the pinnacle of our civilization's achievement, and right now, it's about to destroy the galaxy, Rodriguez pointed out. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them. There must be another way, a more sophisticated solution, a quantum approach that preserves the system's integrity while correcting the calculation error. Rodriguez looked around the chamber at the frantically working alien technicians, their quantum computers running probability calculations that generated enough heat to power small cities. They were throwing the most advanced technology in the galaxy at the problem, and the problem was getting worse. How many of your sophisticated solutions have worked so far? The silence that followed was answer enough. Sometimes, Rodriguez said, hefting her hammer, the most sophisticated solution is knowing when to use a simple one. She struck the primary calculation matrix with a blow that would have been considered gentle by construction worker standards, but was utterly unprecedented in the annals of quantum physics. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystalline structure rang like a bell, its harmonic frequencies shifting from the mathematical precision of recursive calculation to the chaotic randomness of structural vibration. The quantum fields that had been locked in an endless loop suddenly found themselves dealing with classical mechanical perturbation, a problem so fundamentally different from their original calculation that the error correction systems didn't know how to respond. For a moment, the entire Starkiller facility held its breath. Then, with a sound like reality itself sighing in relief, the quantum cascade began to collapse. The mathematical equations that had been trapped in recursive loops suddenly found their way to termination conditions. The probability matrices that had been locked in endless calculation cycles finally reached stable states. The star killer was still functional, but it was no longer eating the galaxy. Impossible, Zixara whispered, her crystalline form flickering with harmonic patterns that suggested profound cognitive dissonance. Quantum systems cannot be affected by crude mechanical intervention. Apparently they can, Rodriguez replied, tucking her hammer back into her tool belt. You just have to hit them in the right place. The implications of what had just occurred were staggering. The galaxy's most advanced quantum technology had been saved by a tool that would have been familiar to a medieval blacksmith. 3 million years of technological sophistication had been trumped by applied mechanical engineering. How? Asked technician Melvox, his harmonic voice carrying frequencies of pure bewilderment. How could primitive kinetic force affect quantum probability states? Rodriguez smiled with the satisfaction of an engineer who had just proven a fundamental point about the relationship between theoretical perfection and practical reality. Because, she explained, quantum systems still exist in the physical universe. They still have to obey the laws of physics, and sometimes, the most direct way to solve a physics problem is with physics. The aftermath of the Star Killer crisis sent shockwaves through galactic civilization that were almost as profound as the reality distortions the weapon had created. The fundamental assumptions about technological sophistication had been challenged by a human engineer with a hammer, and the implications were still being processed by civilizations that had spent millennia perfecting quantum manipulation. We need to revise our understanding of system design, High Technician Zixara announced to an emergency session of the Nexus Collective's Engineering Council. Her crystalline form had lost much of its earlier arrogance, replaced by the harmonic frequencies of someone who had been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of technological advancement. The human approach appears to have merit, admitted technician Melvox, his statement carrying the kind of grudging acknowledgement usually reserved for admitting fundamental errors in mathematical proofs. Simple mechanical systems provide redundancy that our integrated quantum architectures lack. Redundancy is not the only benefit, Zixara continued, her harmonic patterns indicating deep contemplation. The human engineer's intervention succeeded because it operated on principles completely outside our system's design parameters. Our quantum error correction algorithms were sophisticated enough to handle any quantum-based failure, but they could not account for classical mechanical perturbation. The concept was revolutionary for a civilization that had spent millions of years perfecting quantum technology. The idea that sophisticated systems might need unsophisticated backups violated every principle of elegant engineering that the Nexus Collective had developed, but the evidence was undeniable. The Star Killer had been saved not by advanced quantum mechanics, but by applied percussion maintenance. We need to consult with the human engineer. Zixara decided, her words carrying the weight of a species-wide paradigm shift. If crude mechanical solutions can affect quantum systems, then we must understand how to integrate such approaches into our designs. The request that reached Rodriguez was unprecedented in galactic history. The Nexus Collective, masters of quantum technology, builders of stellar manipulators, creators of devices that operated across 17 dimensions, was asking a human mechanic for engineering advice. "You want me to help you redesign your quantum systems?" Rodriguez asked, studying the formal invitation that had been delivered by beings who existed primarily as mathematical concepts. "We want you to help us understand how to make our quantum systems reliable," Zixara replied, the word carrying harmonic frequencies that suggested she was still struggling with the concept. "Your mechanical approach prevented catastrophic failure that our most sophisticated error correction systems could not address. That's because you over-engineered the problem," Rodriguez explained patiently. "You created a system so sophisticated that it couldn't handle simple failures. You needed quantum computers to monitor quantum computers that monitored quantum computers. Eventually, all that sophistication turned into a single point of failure, and your solution, simple backups, mechanical overrides, systems that work even when the fancy stuff breaks down." Rodriguez pulled out her tablet, a device that was laughably primitive by galactic standards, but which had the advantage of being comprehensible to someone with basic electronics training. Every critical system should have a manual backup. Every automated process should have a mechanical override. Every quantum calculation should have a classical alternative. The concepts she was describing were anathema to the Nexus Collective's engineering philosophy, but they were also, the recent crisis had proven, absolutely necessary. "You're suggesting that we deliberately include primitive systems in our advanced designs?" Zixara asked, her harmonic frequencies indicating she was struggling to process the idea. "I'm suggesting that you include reliable systems alongside your advanced ones," Rodriguez corrected. "Sometimes the most reliable approach is the simplest one." The collaboration that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human engineers worked alongside quantum physicists to develop hybrid systems that combine the best aspects of both approaches. Sophisticated quantum processors were backed up by simple mechanical governors. Complex probability calculations were supplemented by basic analog circuits. Advanced crystalline matrices were protected by crude but reliable physical safeguards. "It's inelegant," complained senior technician Vex Mora during one of the design sessions. "Mechanical overrides introduce physical components that add mass, require maintenance, and operate according to classical rather than quantum principles. They also work when everything else fails," Rodriguez replied pragmatically. "Elegance doesn't matter if your system crashes and burns." The first prototype hybrid systems were tested with extreme caution. The combination of quantum sophistication and mechanical simplicity created devices that operated on principles that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological development. "The quantum efficiency is reduced by approximately 3%, reported the testing team, but system reliability has increased by over 4,000%. "How is that possible?" asked Zixara. "Because the mechanical backups prevent cascade failures," Rodriguez explained. "When something goes wrong, instead of propagating through your entire integrated system, the problem gets isolated and contained by simple physical barriers." The implications extended far beyond the Starkiller project. The Nexus Collective began retrofitting their entire technological infrastructure with mechanical safeguards and manual overrides. Quantum computers were equipped with manual shutdown switches. Probability manipulators were protected by pressure relief valves. Crystalline matrices were backed up by analog calculating devices. "We're deliberately making our systems less sophisticated," observed technician Melvox during a progress review. "We're adding primitive components to advanced designs. We're making them work," Rodriguez corrected. "Sophistication without reliability is just expensive failure. The cultural implications were as significant as the technological ones." The Nexus Collective had built their entire civilization around the pursuit of ever greater sophistication, the belief that advancement meant transcending crude physical limitations in favor of elegant quantum solutions. The human approach challenges our fundamental assumptions about progress, Zixara admitted during a philosophical discussion about the nature of technological advancement. "We believe that evolution meant abandoning primitive methods The humans have shown us that primitive methods might be the foundation. That makes advanced methods possible. Every quantum computer needs a power switch, Rodriguez replied with the pragmatism of someone who had spent decades making things work. Every advanced system needs simple backups. That's not a failure of sophistication. That's engineering. The testing program expanded to include other human technologies. Mechanical governors were integrated into quantum field generators. Analog computers were used to back up digital calculation systems. Physical switches were installed in probability manipulation devices. The hybrid systems are remarkably robust, reported the evaluation team after months of testing. They maintain quantum sophistication when operating normally, but default to mechanical reliability when failures occur, and maintenance dramatically simplified. Instead of requiring quantum technicians to repair probability fluctuations, most problems can be addressed by mechanical engineers using conventional tools. Rodriguez smiled with the satisfaction of an engineer who had successfully made a complex system simple. That's the point. The more ways you can fix something, the more likely it is to stay fixed. The Star Killer itself underwent a complete redesign based on the hybrid principles. The new version maintained its stellar manipulation capabilities, but included manual overrides, mechanical governors, and analog backup systems that could shut down the device if quantum errors occurred. It's larger than the original design, admitted the engineering team, and less elegant, but it's also impossible for it to become trapped in calculation loops, because if the quantum systems fail, the mechanical systems can still shut it down. Rodriguez observed, simple problems require simple solutions. The success of the hybrid approach attracted attention from across the galaxy. Other advanced civilizations began requesting human engineering consultation for their own technological challenges. The ethereal collective wanted mechanical backups for their probability manipulation systems. The Techno-Confederacy requested analog alternatives for their digital control networks. It seems, observed Galactic Council Administrator Thexalon during a technology summit, that the galaxy's most primitive civilization has provided the key to making our most advanced technologies reliable. We're not primitive, Rodriguez corrected with a smile. We're practical. There's a difference. 6 months after the Star Killer crisis, the Galactic Technology Summit reconvened in the same exhibition hall, where human engineering had been dismissed as crude and unsophisticated. But the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The representatives of advanced civilizations who had once looked down on mechanical solutions now regarded them with the kind of respect usually reserved for fundamental scientific breakthroughs. Esteemed colleagues, high technicians, Ixara addressed the assembly, her crystalline form pulsing with harmonic frequencies that indicated profound respect. We gather today to acknowledge a truth that our pursuit of sophistication had obscured. True technological advancement is not about transcending simple solutions. It is about integrating them into our most complex systems. The demonstration that followed showcased the new generation of hybrid technology. Quantum computers with mechanical switches, probability manipulators with analog governors, stellar engineering devices with manual overrides. Each system combined the elegant sophistication of advanced alien technology with the reliable simplicity of human engineering. These hybrid designs represent a new paradigm in technological development. Zixara continued. They achieve quantum sophistication while maintaining mechanical reliability. They operate at the cutting edge of theoretical physics while remaining repairable by engineers with basic training. Rodriguez stood at the human demonstration area, surrounded by an audience that included representatives from every major galactic civilization. Her tool belt, once a symbol of primitive crudeness, was now regarded as the foundation of practical engineering wisdom, the key insight. She explained to the assembled dignitaries, is that complexity should serve simplicity, not replace it. Advanced systems should make difficult tasks easier, not turn simple problems into complicated ones. But surely, interjected Ambassador Velmuth of the Techno-Confederacy, there are applications where quantum sophistication is essential. Situations where mechanical alternatives cannot provide adequate functionality. Absolutely. Rodriguez agreed. Quantum technology is essential for stellar manipulation, probability calculation, and multi-dimensional navigation. But those quantum systems need simple backups to ensure they keep working. When something goes wrong, she activated a demonstration device, a hybrid quantum calculator, that could perform probability mathematics impossible for classical computers. but which could default to analog mechanical calculation if its quantum systems failed. This device can calculate 17-dimensional probability matrices using quantum superposition. She explained, but if the quantum systems fail, it could still perform basic mathematical operations using mechanical components. It's not as fast or sophisticated, but it keeps working, and maintenance, asked Senator Clickstar of the computational hegemony. Any engineer with basic training can service the mechanical components. Rodriguez replied, the quantum elements still require specialists, but the system can operate without them if necessary. The concept was revolutionary for civilizations that had spent millennia perfecting increasingly sophisticated but fragile technologies. The idea that advanced systems should be designed around simple, reliable cores challenged everything they thought they knew about progress and technological evolution. We have begun implementing hybrid designs across our entire technological infrastructure, announced Administrator Thexelon of the Galactic Council. The results have been remarkable. System reliability has increased exponentially, while maintenance requirements have decreased significantly. More importantly, added Ambassador Velmuth, we have gained something we didn't realize we had lost: the ability to understand and repair our own technology. When systems become too sophisticated for their creators to comprehend, they become vulnerable to failures that cannot be predicted or prevented. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. That's the real lesson here. You can't maintain what you can't understand. The more complex a system becomes, the more important it is to have simple alternatives that ordinary engineers can work with. The cultural transformation that followed was as significant as the technological one. Galactic universities began teaching courses in practical engineering alongside quantum physics. Students learned to design mechanical backups for digital systems, analog alternatives for quantum calculations, and manual overrides for automated processes. We're not abandoning sophistication, explained Dr. Veltara of the Galactic Institute of Technology. We're learning to build sophistication on reliable foundations. The humans have shown us that true advancement means knowing when to use simple solutions. The economic implications were equally profound. Industries that had focused on producing ever more sophisticated technologies began developing products that prioritize reliability over complexity. The market for hybrid systems, devices that combine advanced capabilities with simple backups, exploded as civilizations learned to value dependability over elegance. It's ironic, observed market analyst Kex Vrim of the Galactic Trade Commission. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy are now competing to produce the most reliable technologies. We've learned that working is more important than impressive. The research and development programs that emerged from this new philosophy were unprecedented in their scope. Quantum physicists collaborated with mechanical engineers to develop systems that operated across multiple technological paradigms. Computer scientists worked with analog technicians to create calculation devices that could function with or without digital processing. We're creating a new category of technology, observed Rodriguez during a scientific conference: sophisticated systems with simple souls, advanced capabilities built on reliable foundations. The Star Killer project became the flagship example of this new approach. The redesigned stellar manipulator retained its ability to alter fusion processes across galactic distances, but it could now be safely shut down by anyone with basic mechanical training. Quantum probability calculations were backed up by analog computers. Complex crystalline matrices were protected by simple pressure relief valves. The new Star Killer is actually more powerful than the original, reported the engineering team responsible for the redesign. The mechanical safeguards allow us to push the quantum systems harder because we know they can be safely contained. If something goes wrong, and if the quantum systems fail completely, the device defaults to basic stellar observation mode. It can't manipulate stellar fusion, but it can still gather scientific data using conventional sensors. Degraded capability is better than catastrophic failure. The testing program for the new Star Killer was exhaustive and deliberately destructive. Engineers simulated every conceivable failure mode, from quantum cascade errors to simple mechanical breakdowns. In every case, the hybrid systems either corrected the problem automatically or failed safely without endangering the surrounding space-time. It's remarkable, observed Zixara during the final testing phase. The system actually becomes more stable as components fail. Each backup system provides additional reliability. That's the point of redundancy, Rodriguez explained. Multiple ways to do the same job means multiple ways to keep working when something breaks. The successful testing of the redesigned Star Killer marked a turning point in galactic technological philosophy. The device that had nearly destroyed reality through over-sophistication had been transformed into a tool that combined advanced capabilities with bulletproof reliability. We have learned something profound, Zixara announced to the Nexus Collective's Leadership Council. Sophistication without reliability is not advancement, it is a dead end. True progress means building complex capabilities on simple foundations. The adoption of hybrid technology principles spread rapidly across galactic civilization. The ethereal collective retrofitted their probability manipulation devices with mechanical governors. The Techno-Confederacy added analog backups to their digital control systems. Even the most advanced civilizations began incorporating human-style engineering redundancy into their most sophisticated technologies. The galaxy is becoming more reliable, observed Rodriguez during a status briefing 6 months after the Star Killer crisis. System failure rates have dropped by over 90% across all participating civilizations, and maintenance costs down by 70%. When engineers can fix problems with basic tools instead of quantum manipulation chambers, repairs become much more affordable. The cultural implications extended far beyond engineering. Galactic society began to reevaluate its assumptions about progress, sophistication, and technological development. The pursuit of ever greater complexity was tempered by a new appreciation for reliable simplicity. The humans have given us a new perspective on advancement, observed Dr. Melchora of the Galactic Philosophy Institute. They have shown us that moving forward sometimes means remembering what we left behind. More specifically, added Dr. Veltara, they have shown us that abandoning reliable methods in favor of sophisticated ones is not evolution, it is a mistake that eventually becomes catastrophic. The educational reforms that followed were comprehensive. Engineering schools across the galaxy began teaching reliability engineering alongside advanced theoretical physics. Students learned to design mechanical backups before they learned to manipulate quantum probabilities. The concept of appropriate technology became a core principle of galactic education. We're not making our students less intelligent, explained Education Minister Haxmira of the Techno-Confederacy. We're making them more practical. We're teaching them that the best solution is the one that works, not necessarily the one that's most impressive. The military applications of hybrid technology were immediately apparent. Starships equipped with quantum mechanical hybrid systems proved far more reliable in combat than purely sophisticated vessels. When quantum computers failed under enemy fire, analog backups kept critical systems operational. When probability manipulators were disabled by electromagnetic interference, mechanical controls allowed continued maneuvering. The new hybrid warships are nearly impossible to disable completely, reported Admiral Kexather of the Galactic Defense Force. Even massive system failures leave basic functionality intact. It's changed the entire nature of space combat. How so? Battles are no longer decided by who has the most sophisticated technology. They're decided by who has the most reliable technology. Sophistication without dependability has become a liability. The economic transformation was equally significant. Civilizations that had spent enormous resources developing ever more complex technologies began realizing massive savings by designing systems that could be maintained by ordinary engineers rather than quantum specialists. The cost of technological ownership has dropped dramatically, reported economic analyst Velkrim of the Galactic Trade Commission. When systems can be repaired with basic tools, instead of requiring exotic quantum manipulation, maintenance becomes affordable for smaller civilizations. The social implications were perhaps the most profound. Galactic society had been stratified by technological sophistication, with the most advanced civilizations looking down on those still using primitive methods. The Star Killer crisis had revealed that primitive methods were often superior to sophisticated ones. We've learned humility, observed Zixara during a cultural analysis session. We've learned that being more advanced doesn't necessarily mean being better. Sometimes it just means being more fragile. The humans have taught us that wisdom lies not in abandoning simple solutions, but in knowing when to use them, added Rodriguez. The most advanced civilizations are those that can choose the right tool for the job, whether that tool is a quantum computer or a hammer. The final validation of the hybrid approach came when the galaxy faced its next major technological crisis. The Void-born, entities of pure energy from another dimension, began attempting to destabilize the quantum foundations of normal spacetime. Their attacks specifically targeted the most sophisticated quantum systems, turning advanced technology against itself. They're using our own sophistication as a weapon, reported the emergency response team. Every quantum system they touch becomes a conduit for reality distortion. What about the hybrid systems? Asked Administrator Thexalon. Completely unaffected when the quantum components are compromised. The mechanical backups prevent system failure. The Void-born can corrupt the sophisticated parts, but they can't touch the simple ones. The hybrid-equipped civilizations found themselves uniquely capable of resisting the Void-born assault. Their technology degraded gracefully under attack, defaulting to reliable mechanical operation when quantum systems were compromised. The very crudeness that had once been seen as a liability became their greatest strength. Ironic, observed Zixara as they watched Void-born attacks fail against hybrid-defended systems. The most advanced technology in the galaxy is being defeated by backup systems that any primitive civilization could understand. Not defeated, Rodriguez corrected, protected. The quantum systems are still there, still functional when conditions allow, but they're protected by simple systems that can't be corrupted or turned against us. The Void-born crisis lasted 3 months before the entities retreated to their own dimension, apparently frustrated by their inability to turn galactic technology against itself. The hybrid systems had proven their worth not just as reliable alternatives to sophisticated technology, but as protection against threats that specifically targeted sophistication. We have learned something important, announced Administrator Thexalon during the post-crisis analysis. Advancement without foundation is vulnerability. The most sophisticated technology requires the most reliable protection, and that protection, added Rodriguez with a smile, often comes in the form of systems that your great-great-grandparents would have recognized. 1 year after the Star Killer crisis, the Galactic Technology Summit convened for a final assessment of the hybrid technology revolution. The transformation of galactic civilization had been swift and comprehensive, with virtually every advanced society adopting some form of mechanical quantum integration. The results speak for themselves, announced High Technician Zixara to the assembled representatives. System reliability across all participating civilizations has increased by an average of 800%. Maintenance costs have decreased by 60%. Most significantly, we have eliminated the single point of failure vulnerabilities that previously threatened our most sophisticated technologies. The statistics were impressive, but the cultural transformation was even more significant. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had learned to appreciate the value of simple solutions, the importance of reliable foundations, and the wisdom of building sophisticated capabilities on top of dependable systems. The humans have given us more than just engineering insights, observed Ambassador Velmuth during the closing ceremonies. They have given us a new understanding of what progress means. Advancement is not about abandoning what works. It is about building on what works. Rodriguez stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that had once dismissed her tools as crude and her methods as primitive. Now those same tools were displayed in museums across the galaxy as examples of engineering wisdom, and her methods were taught in universities as fundamental principles of reliable design. A year ago, she began. You called our technology crude because it used simple mechanical principles instead of sophisticated quantum manipulations. You were right. Our technology is crude. But you were wrong about what that means. She held up the same pressure relief valve she had demonstrated at the previous summit, the simple device that had been dismissed as laughably primitive. This valve is crude because it doesn't try to be anything more than what it needs to be. It doesn't calculate optimal pressure thresholds or analyze system parameters. It just opens when pressure gets to high and closes when pressure drops to safe levels. It's been doing exactly that for over a century without requiring maintenance, upgrades, or quantum technician support. The assembled dignitaries, many of whom now carried similar crude devices in their own equipment kits, listened with the respect usually reserved for fundamental scientific principles. The lesson isn't that sophisticated technology is bad, Rodriguez continued. The lesson is that sophisticated technology without reliable foundations is dangerous. Every quantum computer should have a mechanical switch, Every probability calculator should have an analog backup. Every stellar manipulator should have a manual override. But why? Asked a representative from the crystalline hegemony. Why deliberately include primitive components in advanced designs? Because, Rodriguez replied with the wisdom of someone who had spent decades making complex systems work. The universe doesn't care about your sophistication. It only cares about whether your systems work when you need them to work. And the most sophisticated system in the galaxy is useless if it can't be fixed when it breaks. The final ceremony was unprecedented in galactic history. Representatives from civilizations that had mastered quantum mechanics and probability manipulation lined up to receive training in basic mechanical engineering. Beings who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe wanted to learn how to use hammers, wrenches, and pressure gauges. It's humbling, admitted Zixara as she practiced using a torque wrench under Rodriguez's guidance. We spent millions of years perfecting quantum manipulation, and now we're learning that the most important tool might be the simplest one. Not the most important, Rodriguez corrected, the most reliable. Quantum manipulation is still amazing and necessary, but when it fails, you need something that will work no matter what. The transformation of galactic civilization was complete, but it was not a rejection of sophistication in favor of primitiveness. Instead, it was the integration of both approaches into a technological philosophy that valued reliability as much as capability. We have achieved something remarkable, observed Administrator Thexalon during the closing remarks. We have learned to build sophisticated systems that remain comprehensible, advanced technologies that remain repairable, and complex capabilities that remain reliable. More importantly, added Rodriguez, we've learned that the most advanced thing you can do is know when to use simple solutions. As the representatives returned to their civilizations, they carried with them more than just hybrid technology designs. They carried a new understanding of progress itself, the recognition that true advancement meant building complex capabilities on reliable foundations, not abandoning reliability in pursuit of complexity. The Star Killer still existed, but it was no longer a symbol of unchecked technological ambition. It had become a monument to the principle that the most sophisticated technology in the galaxy could be made safe by the simplest tools in the universe. And somewhere in the quantum mechanical hybrid control room, a pressure relief valve stood, ready to save civilization itself if the advanced systems ever failed again. The galaxy had learned, through near catastrophe and ultimate salvation, that calling human technology crude had been simultaneously completely accurate and utterly wrong. Human technology was indeed crude, deliberately, reliably, beautifully crude, and that crudeness, it turned out, was exactly what the sophisticated galaxy needed. Rodriguez packed her tools, her crude, primitive, indispensable tools, and smiled. The universe was a big, complicated place, full of sophisticated problems and elegant solutions. But sometimes, the most elegant solution was the one that worked when everything else failed. Sometimes, the most sophisticated technology was a hammer. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Galactic Engineering Academy had become the most prestigious institution in known space, not for teaching the most advanced theories, but for teaching the most reliable practices. Students from across the galaxy came to learn the hybrid approach that combined quantum sophistication with mechanical dependability. Professor Rodriguez, the title still amused her, stood before a class of eager young engineers from 17 different species, teaching them the fundamental principle that had saved galactic civilization. Remember, she told them as they practiced using torque wrenches alongside quantum calculators, the goal isn't to choose between sophisticated and simple. The goal is to know when to use which. But Professor, asked a student from the ethereal collective, how do we know when simple is better than sophisticated? Rodriguez smiled, her hand moving unconsciously to the hammer on her tool belt. The same hammer that had saved the galaxy from its own technological hubris. When sophisticated stops working, she replied, simple is always better than broken. The lesson was simple, but the implications were infinite. In a galaxy full of quantum computers and probability manipulators, stellar engineers and reality architects, the most important tool remained the one that worked when everything else failed. The crude tool, the simple solution, the reliable backup that sophisticated civilizations had forgotten they needed, until a human engineer reminded them that sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is hit something with a hammer and make it work.